Alright guys, today I want to talk to you about augments. Specifically, what are augments, why you should be using augments, how to augment gear, as well as some tips and tricks to kind of help streamline the whole process. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So what are augments? Well, augments are a way to add additional stat to your gear. After the augmenting process, you will see a new stat on your gear. The type of stat you get will depend on the gem that you sacrifice, and the amount you get will depend on the level of the legendary stone when you go through the augmenting process. The equation goes like this. It's 5 times the legendary stone level equals the amount of your primary stat increase. But before you can do any of this, you need to know there are a few requirements to augment your gear. The first is that you need to be able to get legendary gemstones. You can get these either from Petrified Screams, or you can use ones you get from completing Greater Rifts. You will also need some flawless gems to sacrifice. If you don't have these, you'll have to combine to make them. If you have both of those, you will need access to Kanai's Cube. If you don't have this, we have a guide to show you exactly where to get it, and you should be able to find that up above. So your gear has to be at an ancient or above quality to be able to augment it. On top of that, the legendary gem that you plan on using needs to be at a specific minimum level before you can use it in the augmenting process. But don't worry about that, we'll go over how to augment your gear in just a minute. So why should you augment your gear? Well, augments are a great way to increase your character's stats. This is useful at all stages of the game and not just in the end game. Gaining even a plus 200 to a primary stat early on can push your character ahead at a much faster rate than just trying to grind Paragon. Also, augments are bound to the gear and not bound to the character. While this isn't as effective for helmets and chest pieces, this does work very well for accessories, which can be swapped between characters and still maintain the stat boosts. Depending on which characters you're swapping this between, this actually can cut down on the amount of grinding you need to do to make those other characters stronger and more competitive. Augments can be overwritten, so don't worry about messing up a piece of gear. You can just re-augment the gear later on to switch out the stat bonus and the stat type. So don't be afraid to augment with a lower stone in the beginning of the game, because you can always increase this bonus later on. So in order to add an augment to an item, you need access to Kanai's Cube. We've talked about this before, we do have another video on it, and it kind of deep dives in everything you need to know about how to use Kanai's Cube and every page in Kanai's Cube. We will put a link to that down in the description, as well as there was a link to it earlier on in the video. But I do want to give you sort of a brief overview of how to do this really quickly. You need to take an item that is of ancient quality, add it to the cube. You also need to add a legendary gem. Now that legendary gem's rank will depend on the type of item you're trying to augment. So for weapons, it needs to be at least a 30. For accessories, it needs to be at least a 40. And for armor, it needs to be at least a 50. After you put the ancient item and the legendary gem in there, you need to put in 3 flawless royal gems of the stat you want to add to that piece of equipment. Once you add all that in and hit the transmute button, out will pop your new augmented piece of gear. So augmenting is nice, and augmenting can give you a nice bonus to your character. But there are a few tips and tricks I can give you guys to help make the process just a little bit easier, help streamline it, and help get you bonus stats quicker. The first tip I want to tell you is Squirt sells dust to convert gems. Now, if you're unsure how to do this, check out my guide on Kanai's Cube because it goes through it in a lot more detail. Don't forget you can use your puzzle rings to farm gems, so try not to break them down and just store them until you have time to run them. So while it's not the best use of bounty material, you can actually try to upgrade these to get them to ancient quality, and then use them in Kanai's Cube, and this will result in better drops while you're inside of the portal. If you find that you're constantly running low on gems, you can put the broken crown on your follower. This is a nice piece of gear because it has an emanating buff, meaning both your follower and yourself will get it. and this will actually double the amount of gems you get when gems do drop for you in the open world. In the early game, you will start to notice that you are getting a lot of legendary gems from Greater Rifts, and most of them you have no desire to use. Well, that's not a problem. Just go ahead and upgrade these legendary gems, and then use those as the legendary gems that you sacrifice during your augmenting process. Don't worry, they will re-drop for you in the Greater Rifts later on. Now, if you're a little bit further in the game and you start running Petrified Screams, there's an easier way to get those level 125 gems almost every time. If you can make it to wave 100 without touching any of the pylons in the room, leave them all there. At level 100, if you grab all 4 of the pylons, you are pretty much guaranteed to get to wave 125, and that is an easy way to get fast level 125 legendary gems for you to use in your augmenting process. And that's it. That should be everything you need to know about augments. Hopefully this information helps you push deeper into those Greater Rifts. If you have any additional tips or tricks, please feel free to leave them down in the comments to help everybody out. And as always, have a great day.